But implicit in the Greek word aletheia is an entirely erroneous concept of memory. According to Socrates, all knowledge is recollection. Memory simply recovers knowledge that we acquired in its ideal state before birth. The original meaning of the word education derives from this same concept. Educate literally means in Latin to lead out. In other words, to bring out something that is already there. Put another way, according to this notion of education, Laurel and Hardy were nuclear physicists waiting to happen. So according to this ancient concept, memory enables us to reach the truth, aletheia, unconcealment, unforgetfulness. But of course we now know that this is not how we acquire knowledge. Going to the root meaning of words or the resonances of previous meaning that they contain is no guarantee of arriving at an essential truth. Heidegger is right. Buried in words is the history of their meaning. But this history is not necessarily a history of corruption or concealment. On the contrary, the history of a word's usage, as distinct from its verbal meaning, is frequently a record of progress toward a truer picture of what actually happens. The Greeks still use the word aletheia for truth, but neither we nor they now regard truth as unforgetfulness or unconcealment. Why not? Because truth has no necessary link with memory. It is not originally discovered within it. Many of Heidegger's concepts suffer from this defective approach. By co-opting words for his own purposes, such as Dasein, taking old ones out of context, such as aletheia, running words together, such as being in the world, and so forth, Heidegger managed to create his own inimitable language. This cast a spell over all intelligibility but its own, to itself. We have seen that the world, Dasein with, and existence are equiprimordially disclosed, and state of mind is a basic existential species of their disclosedness, because this disclosedness itself is essentially being in the world. This is but a minor example, where the being of intelligibility in itself hovers at the edge of its own exclusivity. As Heidegger himself so aptly put it, the nothings. But does this really get to the bottom of nothing, one wonders? Or is it perhaps nothing at all? One must assume that Heidegger is being serious when he warns us with adroit mixed metaphor, when irrationalism, as the counterplay of rationalism, talks about the things to which rationalism is blind, it does so only with a squint. For Shakespeare, the play's the thing. For Heidegger, play itself manages to talk cross-eyed. As he soberly warns us, we must avoid uninhibited word mysticism, an admonition that he immediately follows with, nevertheless, the ultimate business of philosophy is to preserve the force of the most elemental words in which Dasein expresses itself, and to keep the common understanding from levelling them off to that unintelligibility which functions in turn as a source of pseudo-problems. Indeed, even for us of the common understanding, words that have force at the expense of meaning are devoid of pseudo-problems. Instead, they have real problems if they are to be understood at all. Heidegger's declared aim was to determine the essence of man solely in terms of his relationship to being. Such inward-looking exclusiveness reminds us that Narcissus, too, derives from that era of integrated being which ended with Socrates. It also begs a vital question. What if this essence of man lies elsewhere than in the realm of this denatured being? What if it lies in part or entirely in the realm of psychology, or social existence, or religion, or political existence, or rational philosophical investigation, or in a fusion of several of these? What if there is no such thing as existence without these particular aspects of it? Indeed, is it possible to conceive at all of existence devoid of such attributes? In order to come to terms with Heidegger, one must leave aside such quibbles. How are we to arrive at this essence of man, or at least progress toward it? According to Heidegger, this could be done only by eliminating the accidental and the trivial, as we concentrate on the core of human being. Only by the anticipation of death is every accidental and provisional possibility driven out. By grasping the finitude of one's existence, one frees oneself from the shallow multiplicity of possibilities that life presents to us. By shunning such things as comfort and the easy life, and by not ignoring the question of death, we can bring Dasein into the simplicity of its fate. In angst or disquieting guilt or the grim prospect of dying, the being of Dasein is disclosed to us. Such extremes are necessary because of the deep fall or decay, Verfall, that has occurred in Western thought. Verfall, literally to fall away. Man has fallen away from his being. This has been brought about by our exaggerated and one-sided technical development, which ignores our deeper being. Here it is seemingly necessary to overlook the fact that this development elevated most of us from a nasty, brutish, and short life, giving us the leisure and conditions in which we could think about our existence. At any rate, the result is that we now have a highly inauthentic way of being. This inauthenticity has been inevitable to human existence, and has characterized it more or less since Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle ruined everything. According to Heidegger, the curse of inauthenticity comes from simply not concentrating one's life upon the question of being. It occurs in individual behavior, arising from such trivial pursuits as brain surgery, devoting one's life to the selfless service in a leper colony, or becoming a chess grand master. And it occurs in the behavior of an entire epoch, such as the Hellenic period, the Renaissance, and the Enlightenment. In 1928, Husserl retired from the professorship of philosophy at Freiburg. On his strong recommendation, Heidegger was given the post. At 39 he was now a full professor. His inaugural lecture was entitled, "What is Metaphysics?" In this he further elaborated on his existential philosophy. Once again the young, charismatic professor in his homespun mountain peasant's outfit lambasted modern industrialized society. Such a back-to-basics plea found a ready hearing in Germany in 1928. The country was beginning to recover from the ruin of the inflation years, but many solid middle-class citizens had lost all their savings, and with them their status. An undercurrent of deep dissatisfaction remained with the fate of Germany in the 20th century. The powerful, self-confident nation that the Kaiser had led into the World War had within 10 years been reduced to an anxious, money-grubbing society ruled by bickering politicians. In his lecture, Heidegger outlined how man's Verfall was now leading to his being becoming submerged in his surroundings. His being was becoming a thing. His individuality was becoming lost, to the point where he was becoming, in a very real sense, a nonentity, a nobody. Man was becoming das Man, literally that one, an alien object. Instead of concentrating on his own being, man ignored himself and faced outward. This other-directedness meant that he now saw himself in terms of his fellow citizens. Instead of defining himself in his being, he measured himself against his society. The effects of das Man were all too recognizable in modern society. Mass behavior gave rise to mass lives. Shallow living begat shallow being. Conversations filled with idle chatter generated no genuine intimacy, and as a result, personal relationships were reduced to inauthenticity. Instead of genuine learning, das Man was filled with mere curiosity. He sought out the new rather than the true. Such distractions, the continual search for something different, new fashions, all induced an indifference toward the question of being. The people in this mass manifestation sought banal contentment, which was devoid of deep joy. Knowing joy is the door to the eternal. Although this was a time without God, Heidegger's position remained undeniably religious. As the critic A.D. Ness has observed, the search for being is merely a disguised quest for a kind of belief in God. Either way, this God, absent or present, had no place in modern life. Heidegger remained insistent upon this point. Modern industrial society produced widespread misery and shallow happiness in equal measure. There was no room for freedom of thought and action or independence of being in any form, and so Heidegger's misanthropic lament went on. And on. All these fads, jazz, Charlie Chaplin, Plato in paperback, a disaster. Not only would Heidegger have seen this book as a disaster, but also the fact that you are reading it. Even though it was about him, this would not have mitigated its deplorableness. Presumably you should have gone to the original German for enlightenment. There you could have come face to face with a genuine article. Our analysis of the worldhood of the world